Today we are talking about the ladies' major champions and their golf swings and doing a little analysis of the swings we see. So, first up is the champion of
the A&A Inspiration.
The A&A Inspiration.
Which is going to be changing its name next year.
Okay.
I think it's changing to Chevron.
Well,
anyways.
First major of the year.
Dinah Shore.
Yeah. Patty. And her last name is Patty
Tavatanakit.
Okay, I can't say that. Anyway, let's get into her golf swing and see what it looks like. See if she...
It's really good.
It is good. We're going to draw a couple lines here. So we've got her line on her backside, line on the top of her head, and one out on her forehead, just to get an idea of how her body moves in space. So we missed her backswing. Oh, the camera's moving. This is not going to work.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess I will delete the lines and we'll just walk through what she's doing, because the lines will wander.
Well, that's a good point about camera angles. When you guys are doing your own swing analysis at home, or like members of our site, we're pretty dialed in on how specific we'd like it.
Yes.
But what you can really see here is how high those hands get.
Yeah, so at the top of her swing, she's got her hands way up high, nice and high. She's got a little left bend. You can see her pelvis has got some inclination, but it's not drastically inclined.
Yeah.
So she doesn't... I didn't get to see her setup, so I can't tell how much anterior tilt she has, but my guess, just looking at how she's moving through space, she didn't have a ton. Mm-hmm. And it's very symmetrical looking golf swing. Reaches the top. Her left wrist looks like it might just be a hair cupped, and the face looks like it might be a hair open. It's a little blurred, so it's hard to see. But what I'm looking at here is the flow of motion, how she moves, and how she sequences. So you can see the transition, she re-squares up really fast. So she's back to square before her hands even get back to parallel to the ground.
Yeah.
So, earlier than what we see in most men, and that's pretty common amongst the women, they seem to be a little bit more spinny.
Yeah.
They don't put as much force into the ground, they use more spin.
Yeah, she definitely doesn't, I would say, sit as much as maybe some of the guys do.
Yeah.
But I will say, watching her on TV that week and seeing her in person on driving ranges, she's one of those that when you watch her swing, to me it kind of looks like she sets it and then she just unwinds. It's like there's a brief pause and then go and just sort of unwind.
So I'm going to look at it at full speed so I can see the flow of it.
To me, it's a hair of a 1-2 versus flowing.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
A little kind of Hideki-ish, almost a little slow down and then go.
Right.
But it's really good. She, like Hideki, her pelvis actually works up a little sooner than my preference. But the sequence of motion, how her body moves, is really good. She squares up really early. At left arm, or at shaft parallel, she's back to square with her chest. Mm-hmm. So the geometry is really neutral. What's her ball flight, do you know?
I want to say she was hitting a pretty high driver. Can't remember if it was a draw or fade from watching her. It was pretty straight. I mean, the girls out there, they don't really curve it that much.
Yeah, they generally
but she's one of the longest hitters out there. I mean, she's carrying her driver at least 270, so...
That's pretty big hit.
That's long.
And you can see her spine bends nicely the way I like it to bend. My preference is her pelvis kind of works up and into the ball a little bit more than I would like to see it, but she matches it up pretty good and really hits. You can see that she's going to hit the ball high by the way she's pushing up out of the ground.
Yeah.
We're going to still kind of put my lines on the side of the pelvis so we can see how she moves. So you can see there's a little trigger, a little move off the ball, but not a ton of slide forward. She keeps her, you can see her front leg is angled away from the target at contact, which is one of the things I really like to see.
I really love her setup. Classic athletic setup.
Yeah, very classic athletic setup. Kind of almost looks like the video we just did on athletic setup. So, really cool setup, really cool move. Not a ton of lateral, but You can see definitely there's a little pressure moving,
Mm-hmm.
nice wind up. She stays inside of her feet. There's not a lot of slide and tilt
Yeah.
in the golf swing. So it's pretty good.
You can see if you watch it again at full speed, that flow I was talking about, though, it's a little bit of a... Once it's there at the top, you know, she gives it 1 second, kind of just... She collects herself and then goes, just rips. It's not maybe as flowing as some motions you've seen throughout history. It's a little more, I hate to say segmented because it's so good, but there is a little bit of that.
The backswing is a little more deliberate, is what I would say. She just kind of puts it in place and then goes. We kind of see a little of that in Colin Morikawa's golf swing also. So a little of the similarity there. She's not really swinging the club back with any velocity. She kind of just moves it up where she wants it and then goes.
Yeah.
Cool move though. Okay, so now we're doing the U.S. Open at the Olympic Club, and our winner was Yuka Saso.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who've watched this golf swing, it's reminiscent of somebody else on. It looks very similar to a gentleman on the PGA Tour.
Yep. There's been some really good comparison videos with the two of them. So Rory McIlroy and Yuka. Got a little shot tracer on this one.
Yeah. And I actually think Yuka's swing looks like Rory's swing looked like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Very much. He's a little more across the line. She's not really across the line here.
Yeah.
She's more right on the money at the top with a flat left wrist. He's a little more cupped and across. His move has changed a little bit over the last little bit. Her face is a little shut there at the top, which I like. Really, that club really pitches back behind her. You can see if we draw in the line here. Shaft plane there, and at the same point in time, you know, you can see that
it gets even more behind.
It's more behind her on the way down.
I love her rotation.
And her rotation is sweet. She puts a lot of force into the ground. You can tell by what her feet do. So if we... Now this shot, she wasn't hitting a driver, but when she's hitting driver, her left foot comes unglued.
Yeah.
She actually goes boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what you see a lot of the long hitters do. And she's not a very big person.
No.
But she moves it, right?
Yep, she gets it out there. Maybe not quite as far as like Patty and Nelly Korda, who we'll show later, but she gets it out there pretty good.
Yeah. Now what I really love about her golf swing is this pelvis motion. So I'm just going to highlight this for everybody because she does some things that I really like to see. And you'll see as she takes this club back, her right hip pretty much stays on the wall, but watch what happens in transitions. You can see how there's a little added hip flexion in the little, right in transition, that little line on her, that little seam line, it doesn't move. It almost backs up a little. You can see her phone or her whatever, her scorecard, yardage book in her pocket looks like it backs up just a little bit.
I'm going to get a chair so they can see. So it's got right glued on this chair, and then she gets both squared up. And she's not moving out when she does it, right? So
she almost, as she transitions, she almost, for just a split second, it goes back a little farther.
Yeah.
So it's like that right glute gets back, and then it almost goes just a little bit more back in transition, and then she unwinds, which it's a really awesome move.
So for you guys at home, that chair drill can be a good one.
Cool. So I love that. Now let's look at her face on. What I notice about her swing, face on it, she has one of the least lateral motions of any of the players on the LPGA Tour. It looks more like what we see with long drivers. We can get a good sense of what she's doing in this golf swing. We'll put a circle around her head. Okay, so as she takes the club back, but you can really see how her head is kind of wandering right, and here at the top of her backswing, she's got some angle away from the target, which I really actually like to see that. That's kind of reminiscent of Tiger back in 2000. And her pelvis definitely did stay centered. You can see it's not getting outside of her feet. There's not a lot of lateral there.
Yeah.
And then she lands.
Now that's pretty sick right there.
Now that is pretty cool. She lands, and there's no... That left hip doesn't even go forward hardly at all. It just, boom, like that. Home run hitter.
Yeah. And she goes after it. Like, when you watch her in person, like, her tempo, when you look at, like, we just did Patty, where it's a little bit more deliberate back, kind of set, and then go. I mean, Yuka's just, like, wham, wham, just, like, goes after it.
I'm going to draw in a line on her belt line so that everybody can see what happens in transition here. See how her belt goes under the line?
Yeah.
That's kind of the Rory squat. She has that same little into the ground and really turning. That's very reminiscent of what we see a long driver doing. This is a really dynamic action. Pretty cool move Yuka has. I love it. Imagine what she would do if she was 6'1" or 2" like some of the other girls out there. She'd put it out there farther than us.
She's still really young, so
yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me if she started to win a couple times a year.
Oh, here we can see that footwork too. So you can see her heel replants. See that replant a little closer, like I talk about with the dynamic players, and then watch how it jumps off the ground and spins back.
She's using. We've talked about this before. There's another girl in the LPGA. Her name is Bianca.
Oh yeah, that one bombs it.
I can't pronounce her last name. I'm so sorry. But anyways, what she does, she's probably the longest hitter on tour. What she does so well is she gets into the ground, but then she's using actually the ball of her foot and even her toes. And they're almost like talons. And this is kind of what Yuka's doing too, where she gets into the ground like that, and then just unwinds and rips
uses
off
that front
of it.
side to really rip out of the way like that.
Yeah. So a lot of you at home are trying to fall into your heel or fall into the outside of your foot, but in reality you see a lot of these guys, they actually are getting mostly in the middle or the ball of their foot to start with, and then
it circles back if they don't jump off the ground. But the ones who actually jump off the ground, they keep using that ball and they actually will push that.
It's like gripping with their toes or something. So cool.
So next up we have the KPMG Ladies PGA Championship, and our winner there was Nelly Korda, and she had a pretty good year.
Great year.
She did okay, and for me, she has a very aesthetically pleasing golf swing. It's very good. How tall is she?
Nelly's she's got to be 6 feet, I would say.
She's tall.
6'1".
Those Korda sisters are tall.
Yeah.
And again, you can see as she takes the club back, her pelvis, this camera angle's a little off, so it's really hard to see, but her pelvis stays back, and then as she starts down, she gains, you can see her gaining flex. If she had a belt on, that belt buckle would be going toward the ball, down. So she's gaining hip flexion in transition, and you can see she's really unwinding. It's very pivot-centric. She's not pulling that club down with her arms.
No.
Her pivot's driving her arms and slinging them, and then her arms really do whip out and accelerate and take advantage of that big frame.
And I would say, something we talk about on this channel all the time is flow. She may have some of the best flow you see out of any of the players on the LPGA. It's just, you can really see it when you watch her on TV or in person.
Yeah, she has great
it's very
flow.
Long language, just kind of, but, she's tall and
makes it look easy.
Yep.
And she really sequences things nicely. Doesn't move into the ball. Her pelvis stays out of the way, but the flow of that motion. She squares up by about left arm parallel. By shaft parallel, her chest is back basically square to the target line. So it's right in line with what other great athletes do. At contact, her pelvis is open. You can see both pockets if she had pants on. Chest is starting to open up. Yeah. She's got nice side bend. Yeah. It's beautiful. See her right arm under left.
But one thing to note with these LPGA players is that when you watch them, if you see an impact position or a slowdown at face on, they're not going to have as much shaft lean as some of the guys on tour. And that has a lot to do with the club head speed, right?
Yeah, so optimal amount of lean is different based on speed. So if the average person put the kind of lean that you and I put into the shaft, what would happen to their ball flight?
It'd be pretty low.
It would be really low.
Tiger stinger.
And it wouldn't stop. Yeah. It would be a roller.
Right, because they're not going to generate spin.
They don't generate enough spin, they don't generate enough lift to get that ball to launch out and then fall out of the sky with all the speed that we produce. Ladies are more in line with what the average person is doing.
Well, and this is why, watching these videos or some of the LPGA players play is such a great thing, because you start to see higher ball flights and not necessarily driving it down so much, right?
But you can see here, she's at like P5.5, and you can see how her pelvis is already opening up very nicely. And by the time she gets to the ball, come on, give me the... So by contact, right there, you can see which way she's facing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not at the ball, that's for sure. She's facing like that. And often, one of the things I want to clarify is often people think that the chest or the shoulders are square to the target at impact, or square to the ball at impact. It's not really true.
This just hurts.
Yeah, and here you can see it. Her left shoulder is kind of pulled out this way, but her chest is turned. If this shoulder was pulled back, her chest is pointed out here somewhere.
Right.
And that's how pretty much every really good ball striker at contact, that's what we see.
Right. So the chest is open, but the reason the shoulders appear more square or closed is because the club's got to get down the ball with the left arm.
That's one of the so you're not gonna retract this shoulder blade and pull it all the way back.
Do a shrug. So
it's more like this. And then the other thing you have to notice is there's some side bend. So, but this side bend, my chest looks pretty square.
Right.
But in reality, it's pointed way out there.
Right. Exactly. And you can really see that.
And then you can really see that here with her. Okay, Henry. So let's talk about the Evian. What's that called now? It's Evian. It used to be the Evian Masters or something like that.
I think it's just Evian Championship.
Evian Championship. So, Minjee Lee won that golf tournament, right? Mm-hmm. And I've done her first major. I've done an analysis of her golf swing before. It's a pretty cool golf swing. You can really see.
I think her swing's built a little more for precision than the last few swings we've seen.
Yes.
Not as long of a hitter. When we played with her in a practice round, it was just more machine-like, more precision-like.
Yeah, she's not as long a hitter. Her swing is not as long.
Right.
And it's not as dynamic. She's probably not very big either. Is she about 5'5"?
Yeah, 5'5". I'd
so about average size.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see there's really, if we just look at this at speed, there's really not a lot of pressure moving foot to foot. She's just kind of turning it back, and then she pivots out of the way really well. And you can see how the club moves kind of simultaneous, or maybe the pelvis even moves slightly before the club starts to move.
And it's almost like she's keeping it pretty wide. She doesn't really create much like hinge or angle here. It's pretty...
Yeah, she keeps it really wide.
Yeah.
It almost looks like it even widens out a little bit, like she's almost going a little this way.
Yeah. But pretty good wrist conditions.
Oh, yeah.
Just not as much, maybe.
And you can see right there, one frame back, this is cameras. The shutter speed's so slow on these. This is off TV, I'm guessing. Somebody snipped it off TV.
Well, we wanted to get you guys some swings of them when they were actually winning and playing their best.
So you can see right there, at this point, what her arm structure looks like. She's got right wrist extension. The club is behind her hands slightly, and her body's already open. So her pelvis is open, and her chest is almost back square at that point in time. And then she turns right into the ball. At contact, right there, you can see her whole back.
Yeah.
Left pocket and her whole back, almost all the way to her left shoulder. So she's really around. And then that club's going to go left and exit out under her left shoulder. Pretty cool swing. And you can see as she takes the club back, there's really not much of a trigger. It's just kind of turn it back.
Yeah. Like I said, I think her swing was more developed with precision and accuracy in mind, right? It wasn't really, my guess as a kid, she wasn't really going after it and playing the power game.
Yeah, it looks like a golf swing that would produce nice, accurate shots. But you can see the sequence here. Her hands are still working up, and see that belt line start to go around?
Yeah.
So that's a cool move. And then you can see her right there just prior to contact. The ball's still there, but you can see how she's really got around. And it doesn't look like there's a lot of lateral motion. There's just not a lot of there's not a lot of flow and pressure. So she's not going to be quite as dynamic as she could be. But she hits it far enough, obviously. She won Evian, so she's pretty good. And you can see the bends in her body right there. At the top of her swing, she's got a little left bend. You can see the creases on the left side of that shirt. And then you see that real stretch. As the left hip starts to go around, the left shoulder doesn't really start to move for a bit. Now all the wrinkles on the left side are gone, and they've probably switched over on the right side now, and you can't see the right side, but pretty cool move.
Kind of finishes a little bit over
Top
here
heavy,
too. Just
chest
a
out in
little
front
bit.
of her foot, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a sign of somebody who is not trying to hit it that hard. You know, somebody who's really smashing it.
Yeah, they're more
back there, backing up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so now we're going to
the Open Championship.
Yeah. Okay, so Anna Nordqvist at Carnoustie.
Now I've stood next to Anna and watched her hit balls a few times now. She's a lot bigger than me.
She's
a lot.
She might be 6'3", 6'4", somewhere in there.
Yeah, she's very tall.
6'2".
And she's really not known for being a really long hitter. She's kind of an average-ish hitter for an LPGA Tour player.
She probably carries her driver about 250.
Which is fairly long, but not
not
like the longest.
No.
Not very long for a woman of her stature.
I think she falls more in that category of the player we just talked about was Minjee Lee, whereas the first three we talked about, Patty, Yuka, and Nelly, are all a little bit more powerful, a little bit more flowing.
More dynamic. You can see here, let's play this swing at full speed. Well, it's a good golf swing. It flows pretty good.
She might be one of the best iron players out there.
She's a great iron player, and she's been good for a long time. But you can see she kind of puts the club into position. I'm not going to draw any lines on any of these videos because every one of these cameras is very bad. They're moving all over the place, so lines are not going to do us much good. But we can see the flow. You can see from the top of her swing, you can see how that left side just goes out of the way.
Yeah.
Clears out around. Her hands come down a little bit more than Minnie. She's got really low hands coming down. So as she reaches left or shaft parallel, you can see how that her left arm is actually pointed almost toward her toes. Back this way instead of out toward the ball. Generally, that's what we see in players that are not swinging extremely hard at it, not as powerful.
Do you think part of that could also be too, where one thing I kind of looked at and noticed with her is she doesn't really get a lot of extension in this trail leg in her backswing. She's not really making this massive turn.
No,
she's kind of just stable, right? And like you said, almost the club just gets into position.
Yeah, she kind of just lifts the club up into position. Her lower half's very stable under her.
Yeah. So do you find with players like that, there could be a tendency sometimes to have the hands try to get back low in front of them?
A lot of times the hands low is what they did in the backswing. You can see her arm plane is pretty low. It's under her shoulders.
Yeah.
So there's lots of depth there.
Okay.
And then as she changes directions, her right arm moves out in front of her, but her left arm kind of works this way, down her chest.
Yeah.
A little bit more instead of working more out toward the ball.
And that probably has a little bit to do with her grip being a little more neutral or weak.
Yeah, her grip's probably slightly on the weaker side. Hard to see here, but we'll look at that from face on. But all the, I would say that this golf swing is very similar to Justin Rose. To me, I see a lot of Justin Rose in her golf swing. Pretty good golf swing. I like the sequence of it. Her hand path is just a little bit more down.
Her ball doesn't curve, by the way. It's like straight.
She hits straight shots.
Straight.
Yes. Yeah. I've watched her in person a few times on the range, hitting next to her, and I'm watching her ball go like this and my ball go like this. But anyway, awesome. So now, an interesting thing here about the target view, you can see at address, her arms are actually hanging down inside of her shoulders.
Yeah.
That's part of why her hands need to come down so much, because some of it's how she sets up.
Well, and her grip, like as you can see, the glove logo
is pointed close to straight out toward the. Yeah. It's on the weaker end of things.
I wouldn't say it's the weakest we've seen, but it's definitely not.
It's not a strong grip.
No.
But her hands definitely hang in.
Yeah, very underneath her.
Yes, very underneath her. She's got a long body, big torso there. It looks like, so her arms can just kind of dangle down. Now, as we put this in motion, you can see she's got lots of depth there. And then her hand, you can see that left arm comes back where it's pointed really down. Not so much out, like we see with the really long hitters there. Usually the left arm is more pointed out toward the ball. Hers is pointed more down. And her chest is definitely not as open. as some of the others. And that has to do with her grip. You know, she's got that weaker grip, and she uses shoulder extension, arm lowering to square the face up more than she does bowing the wrist and still opening up.
Yeah.
It's just, her pattern's just a little different.
You know what's really interesting with her is notice her head. It almost looks like her head is pointed on the ball or even left target side of the ball. Doesn't it kind of from this angle?
And her eyes are, her head's
That's
tilted
what I'm saying,
this way.
Yeah. She's almost like this.
Yeah.
Versus, you see a lot of players, right? Their head is kind of this way, if anything.
And hers is the other way.
Hers is almost like, I can't even do it.
Well,
I'm like,
it's like her, it's cocked this way.
She's very like, it's almost stacked a little bit, but it's also still opening the target a little bit, in a way.
Yeah. It's interesting. But you can really see that shaft stand up, and then watch in transition. See that first move?
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, I bet if we went through all these and actually looked at that, we'd see that. That's a common denominator amongst all of them.
Yeah.
It says, as that pelvis starts to open up, the center of mass of that club pitches back. Pretty cool move.
I mean, even for Minjee, who was maybe throwing it just a hair,
it was shallowing out.
Hers was still, you know.
Yeah. She was Minjee was kind of throwing it at the same time. She really rotates her pelvis a lot, and she kind of throws the club away from her.
Yeah. And again, for players with their club head speed, right, they don't need to be having as much shaft lean as, say, a Dustin Johnson, right? Lexi might have the most shaft lean out on that tour, but she's also probably one of the fastest out there. So the thing about it is, like, again, like you said earlier, for most golfers, the average golfers, male or female on TV, go watch the women play because they're hitting it higher and they're launching it, and they don't have to have so much of this. They can get away with a little less.
Well, that's an interesting thing. We were just over at Payne doing fitting with Dana, and we've got Dana Finkelstein, LPGA Tour player, hitting her driver and launching it at 19, and right next to her, Grant Waite hitting driver and launching it at 11.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference. She's definitely not leaning the shaft as much. She's definitely hitting up quite a bit more. But she still does have what some would call toe, where the club hasn't passed her hands at contact. So even though there's no lean in the shaft, it's not flipped past her.
Right.
So that's the key to that is just good sequencing, and most of these pros have nice sequencing. Well, anything else you want to mention about any of these?
No, I think that, again, that's kind of the big point is when you watch the women on TV, I mean, it's a great way to see how the top players in the world are making it work when they're only carrying it maybe 240, 250 at the most. There's a few outliers, but there's also, with Dana, she's carrying her ball about 210, 215, right? And she's still competing out there. So it just goes to show you that there's other ways to get around the golf course.
A lot of ways to do it. And we're not all going to be Dustin Johnson flying those 320 bombs.
Nope.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment below with any questions, thoughts, or future video ideas, as we read every comment and we try to respond to each of you. If you would like further help with your game, head over to milolionsgolf.com, my website, and you can schedule lessons with myself or a member of my team. You can also join our academy, where you can get one-on-one coaching. We have members of our academy all over the world, and we're excited to work with you no matter where you're at. And if you're new to our channel, don't forget to click that subscribe button, because we come out with new videos weekly. Thanks for watching.